Okay. So like first thing when we're talking about the software, we're going to need to know how to connect to it properly. And so from our website, you can download the TekTouchPad configuration utility, this guy here. And we also will supply anyone with a breakout cable that you need to connect it with anyhow. Pretty much any classroom would already have that. But besides that, you need a dual or a DB9 female null modem and a USB to DB9 serial cable to connect it to your PC. Those can be found pretty easily off Amazon or just about wherever. Let's see. And once we like install the software from the website, need to make sure that we have it on the right COM port for the touchpad to be able to communicate with it. And so you can find it just by opening the device manager, and it'll show you where your touchpad's hooked up to your PC. I got mine there. Let's see. If anyone has any places you want to start, please let me know. I'm kind of a little open-ended here. If there's any particular questions about this?
I haven't seen that part of the software, so wherever you want to start.
Yep. Oh, let's just go over here. So in the host COM settings, you got to make sure that you have the right COM port set. Otherwise, you won't be able to talk to the TekTouchPad. A lot of tech words here.
I can't go backwards and reference the cable setup. Was that
here
to talk to the touchpad? Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, that's USB. Okay. My question was, will it talk over USB? So never mind. Thank you.
Yep. That's how we program them. Let's see. So what we want to cover today is basic set, like connecting to it using the command editor to set buttons and loading projects and a little troubleshooting, I think.
Yeah, and then templates and calibration as well, JT.
Yeah, and with a TekTouchPad, we don't have templates. We call them projects, even though it's the same thing. And so we have tons of projects for each different school and for every little different setting. We'll have one for no Blu-ray, with Blu-ray, just because like on this one, you can see there's 2 full pages of just Blu-ray commands. They're just basically CEC controls from whatever switcher is connected to. And all these are very much switcher dependent programs. The command set for a 12.1 MV is different than an N+, which is tedious, but something you gotta know. And then the way the touchpad controls the system kind of is like 2 different paths. So one, I'm kind of just skipping around. So one type is direct control to the switcher. So see touchpad there connected to a switcher, and like we would use that a direct command for, let's say, volume or something, or setting up. A lot of the touchpad projects we have will have a setup command in there that'll factory reset it and then put in a couple default settings like resolution, a few other like EDIT issues. And then most of the commands that you want to put into a TekTouchPad project are ones that are actually relayed through the switcher up to the tech monitor, where most of the control work is done. This is so that we can control multiple elements versus the touchpad connected to the switcher is only controlling that one thing by itself. And so a lot of people, like when they're having issues making their own project, they would have it set. Let's say we want PC on HDMI 1. We would go through here and we'd choose HDMI 1, but that would HDMI 1. That's HDMI 1, 3. Sorry, this is confusing for me. New switcher stuff. And so you'd set it there, and so you could change the switcher to HDMI 1, but the rest of the system wouldn't know where it was at. So not a big deal on a simple classroom, but on a bigger like conference room or something, this could kind of screw some things up.
JT, I just heard you mention making sure the correct switcher was selected, but I didn't see where you did that.
And so I have this one set. We have really bad acronyms for all this stuff, but like up here, you can see LSC stands for Lone Star 2021. So it's a new project, and an SC standard classroom, and MVs for the 1201 MV. There's a couple places you can look. So like if I just click on this PC button, I hit the serial command, you can see that this is the driver that's loaded in the project, a 1201 MV.
Okay, but where you actually select that, is that in this
If
software?
you need to change it, then you go over to File, Open Driver Template. And this is where you can choose from the various ones.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so when you change it, like it'll try to guess and move things to the right place, but it doesn't really always work like that. So like luckily for this one, it's a macro. So we now have the 12.1n driver loaded. And so it still thinks it's macro 19, but the way that 12.1n sends a macro through is different. See here, we got the command 52119. I believe that's probably different. Yep. So there's a difference in the carriage return at the end. So changing drivers in the project is kind of like a tedious thing. That's why we generally just make a whole bunch of different projects for each type of system. If you ever need, a pretty specific thing, you can ask him. We probably have it made up and you just send it to you instead of having to go through each and every little button, making sure that's the right thing. Let's see, where next? And so, okay, so this is for a full classroom with a 12.1 MV, and how a lot of this stuff is set up is, like I was saying, using macros to relay to the tech monitor that's in the ceiling box. And so when you're changing stuff, what you especially have to be careful of is that you match up the macros that you have in the tech monitor. Let's see what we got here. I'm sure something here has macros in it. Yeah, so we can see over here, PC is macro 17. What was on USB-C maybe? Yep, and so that would be 19. And so if you want to add in, or, if you want to add in a button or something, you need to make sure that the tech monitor also has that programmed in on it. So if I just want to have, oh man, I'm losing myself. Let's see what else. If we wanted to add laptop VGA, well, too bad there's no VGA on this switcher, but oh, there's an N. Okay. Yeah, if you're changing it to an N, you would have to add, the macro in on here and also the tech monitor to make it function properly. I guess that's a different talk. So let's just go into a button here. So display power, this is kind of a more complicated one. We have a lot of lamp commands, or what make the button light up, blink, change other buttons as well. And so we got a toggle command here, command type. And so it does one script when you push it and another script when you let or depress it. And so we have a projector scheme for this one too, which is also the how we color the buttons. And so if you want to make a new button coloration, you would go over to here and you can see all the ones that are set up in this project. And let's say I just want to make combine, but we're just going to call it test. And change the normal face of it, and do whatever you want. And then one important thing is, if you're changing the buttons here, you need to make sure you update the ID. It's kind of a bug in the system, but if you don't update the ID, it's likely going to mess up some of the other buttons in the project as well. did anyhow. It's a little tedious. Yeah. Let's see. I know I've been kind of jumping all around. Is there anything I've said that's particularly confusing?
I just wanted to ask, when you install the software, does it automatically put in all those libraries? Like, you've said before, if we need a particular layout.
No, but we can, if you want to request something, we can share the drive link with you or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish we had a better way to go about all of it, but I don't know of one currently. Let's see, what else can we go through? So the screen that comes up when you first hit a tech monitor on is the splash screen. If you want to change that, you go into this host panel settings or panel system settings. That's what it is. Sorry, panel system settings. And that's where you can choose the splash screen for your touchpad. Yeah, fair number of those made up too. If you ever need a different one, we have a whole bunch of campus specific ones and whatnot. This is, a lot of just kind of technical stuff that you won't need to change unless you're moving a touchpad from the podium to a wall. You probably want to invert the screen because the screens have an an angle to it, so it makes it more legible one way on the podium, and then you would want to flip it to be more readable on the wall. Let's see. All right. Well, let's jump into some basic troubleshooting stuff. A lot of people, they'll find that like, well, I can't press the button on it properly. It's not working. The best thing to do is to unplug the touchpad, loosen the screws a little bit, and then plug it back in on the wedge and hold the screen as it's coming back up, and that'll bring up the calibration screen, which you just got to hold little dots for about 3 seconds each. Usually this has fixed, 9 out of 10 touchpad problems I've seen. Well, let's go with 5 out of 10. The other 4 or doesn't control the switcher, which would go back to then probably having the wrong driver in here. Someone will move a touchpad from one of the original 12.1 HDs to an N and wonder why it's not working. Have to change the programming for that on the touchpad and in the ceiling. Next, non-functional screen. Rarely see this one. There's a ribbon cable on the back of the TekTouchPad. I wish I had a picture, but I don't. That sometimes it can get worked loose over years, especially if it's been moved around a few different places. Usually if you just pop open the little clamp and then shove it back in, it'll come back to working fine. It's always best to recalibrate when that happens too. Let's see. And there is one current bug, I believe, there's 2 bugs let's talk about in the current software. One, when you install a new TekTouchPad configuration utility and you go to, the first thing you should do is get updates. So you have all the files for loading a TekTouchPad, like the firmware and the drivers. But a lot of people have an issue where this hardware 1.0 and hardware 2.0 file won't load properly. And so what you have to do is go into your C drive and go to program data. Some people won't have that visible. You would go to view and check hidden items. So program data, TekVOX, TekTouchPad, drivers, and you'd have to manually make this hardware 1.0 and 2.0, and then do the driver update again, and everything should work. Second of all, I think from our website, we should have version 2.4.2 online. If you have this current version, there's a bug when trying to load the splash screen onto a touchpad. Just go to the website and download this version. It's more stable. Let's see. That's about it. So one thing I want to mention, when you're connecting a touchpad to your PC, normally you don't need a null modem for connecting it to a switch or anything, but we have to reverse the leads to actually get to the proper read and write ports on the TekTouchPad itself. So a lot of people, when they're trying to do this, will miss that little piece there. And it's really important if you want to actually do it. Let's see. In case anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's just a little guy like that, which is TX and RX. Okay. Anyone have any questions or something I can explain maybe a little better?
I don't remember from the description of this particular session. Are you also going over the GUI stuff for like the TCX 10, or was this specifically for the touchpad?
This is just touchpad.
Okay. Well, this is supposed to be the third installment. Is that accurate of these?
This is the third training session, yes.
Okay. The first one, did you guys go over, give a general overview for how the different pieces of the software work together?
When you say different pieces of the software, do you mean like Tech Manager and TekTouchPad config?
Correct. Because I mean, you guys are opening this because you're so used to it. You go immediately, where do you need to go to? I don't even know how you open up the TekTouchPad configurator. Is it a separate software? Do you launch
it is a separate software.
inside?
Oh, yeah. Good question, Tammy. Thanks for, yeah.
Oh, wrong one. Yep. So it's a different piece of software.
Okay. And so you're actually doing that, and this is why I was bugging you guys last time about how it interacts with the touch panel. All of the programming is living in this configuration utility. You don't have a separate software programming for the commands that actually go out to the devices. Is that accurate?
Yes. And so our general systems have two different places where the command like sets live, the touchpad and then in the tech monitor. The touchpad mostly is just kind of the user interface, and mostly just relays stuff to the tech monitor and stuff doing the controlling itself.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm just, all the control systems I've messed with before, there's been two separate software programs, one for whatever lives in your control manager, I guess in this case, the Tech 3, yep. And then one for the GUI, whether it's a keypad or a
yeah, that's pretty much how this is. You know, you can do all you control with just the touchpad if you wanted to, but we generally don't, just because it's not network managed or anything. The tech monitors are, and the touchpad itself has one full serial port and a rarely used second just transmit only line that we used to use a fair bit, but now it's pretty much not used at all.
Can it be used as a an IR port?
I think you can. And so what you would do is when setting up a command for, well, you'd actually have to make a custom driver, because there's
you don't have to show me that advanced thing. I was just curious because that's what I do with other control systems. If there's, you can use those ports that only have one way as secondary 232 one way.
Yeah, you can see it up here, this what's labeled the open drain output. You can use that for IR or controlling a secondary switcher or something like that.
Okay. That middle cable, the breakout cable, I would really like to get one of those. I had replied when Jeremiah was asking, but nobody said anything back. So
okay, sorry about that. I think we just lost where that was supposed to go.
That's okay. I know Jeremiah said he did want some for his different campuses, and then I want.
We'll get out a couple kits to y'all and to Jeremiah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know how many null modems and DB9 cables, but I'll see.
No,
if
I
we
don't
can
need the
force that
whole
out.
thing. I don't.
Okay.
I personally
Just the
don't need the
breakout.
whole thing. I just want the breakout, so I don't have to solder all that nonsense.
Yep, no problem. It's a bit of a difficult cable to make yourself.
Yes.
We were doing that for a
Looks
while.
like it.
I'm glad we're not.
I'm getting too old. My eyes are too bad to solder that detailed anymore. So.
Yeah. If you ever did have a application that you needed to use this, what you do is select the channel B, and that sends it out the other serial port, the transmit only one.
Cool.
I don't know if I have any of those drivers currently in here. That's a project one. Yeah, they all live somewhere else. Yeah, but this is how the software will look the first time you open it. And generally, I'd recommend just starting from one of our files. If anyone's working on a particular campus or something, just send us an email and I'll link you our drive file, like a drive file with all the applicable projects in it, just so you have a place to start.
Right.
It's pretty tedious setting up your own. Let's see. Got TSU. Trying to find someone where, yeah. So in systems that we have a TekTouchPad and a TCX9, the programming is a little different just because we're using TekEasyLink in that. And so it would get a different feedback here, but this is probably stuff we don't really have to worry about. Just integrating it with more advanced systems can be a bit more work than just a standard classroom setup.
Right.
If you do invert the screen to move one from the podium to the wall or something, you'll have to recalibrate it too, but it should prompt you with that. Anything else? Oh yeah, here's a good little thing to mention. Like when you first have your project open, you have your touchpad all hooked up, I'd recommend hitting the get version, because that'll, if it comes back with a version name here, that means you have a good connection to your tech monitor. And so if you're just trying to like send config and nothing is working, that's probably not a good connection to it. If you ever have one that it just somehow it's had its firmware wiped from it, you can also connect to that. Get version won't do anything, but you could go to hostcom, set your operational baud rate to the fastest one here, hit OK, and hit ROM update. I don't expect anyone would encounter one that is just only has his bootloader on it, but sometimes, if one's acting really weird, sometimes this can fix it somehow. Lost enough data in itself over the years that's or just had a problem with the firmware. Alrighty. Well, no one has any more questions or anything else I can go into?
There's for a tomball. Sometimes if we ever have a touchpad that one of our professors is just over enthusiastic with, and we have to replace it, we just we pull the config off of it, save it into the configuration utility, and just plug in a spare that we have, and then just load it back onto that and pop it back in. If you ever come across like a damaged one or something's terribly wrong with the screen, but that's what we do.
Yep, and so that works. It doesn't, I don't believe it pulls all the information on there. Like, I don't think it would take the splash screen. So if you're just doing it from like a base unit that doesn't have any programming on it, you probably wouldn't get the splash screen on it that way. But besides that, I think that works just fine, especially if you just want to clone something.
Yeah,
But
we don't get the splash, but we do we do have the splash on hand because we've ran into that before of where
Yep.
when you touch the screen it doesn't say Lone Star.
Yep. That's a good way to go about it.
So where on this utility were you actually selecting the devices, like besides the switcher, like for the particular projector? I'm sure you showed it, but I missed that.
So projector control, that's in the tech monitor. So you'd have to program that in
Okay.
Tech Manager.
So is it anything 232 that would be in the Tech 3?
Pretty much.
Okay.
So yeah, how we use this is just the interface with the switcher, and then that relays it up to the tech monitor, which does all the real control.
Got it. If you're adding specific buttons for something, you might want to pay attention to the group types here. Like we got radio group here and control group. So radio buttons, those are just all basically toggle buttons that are grouped together. You know, all these sources here, those would be in a radio group 1. So if you select one, the others are deselected. So it's kind of like a what's mutually exclusive thing. Yeah.
So for sources, you would want to make sure they're on radio. You don't really need to mess with the control group. It's really a rarely used function. And then for something like a volume button, you want that to be momentary. So you just press it. You can keep pressing it to go like, you know, a whole bunch of times. And there's, you know, only occasionally use things like power as toggle. You know, you want your control system to do something different when you turn it on versus when you turn it off. Like on most of our systems, we have it. So turn the projector on, it gets set to this source and this. And then when you turn it off, it takes off the source buttons that are selected and whatnot and reverts it to usually PC. And would flash for so long. So you, like to try to indicate, don't try to turn me back on yet because the projector takes so long to turn off. So we have it blink for 90 seconds here to indicate that you can't press it yet again.
What's the number in front under feedback list before
Feedback
the word?
list. These reference a feedback macro in the tech monitor that let's see how to describe that. So when the projector comes on and the tech monitor receives the, like, it's in the on state, this is the feedback that it would send. So 521 is just the pass through for the switcher, and then macro is 36. Let's see. This one.
But do we have to know those numbers, or you just select pressed or released and it populates for you?
And so having these set up properly, that just makes it so the button would be in the right state. You know, if the projector is on, the button will be depressed. And this, you know, when you're only using a TekTouchPad to control a system, you know, it'll always be that way anyhow. You turn the projector on, it should set to, you know, the button's depressed. You turn it off, it should set. This matters mostly when you have an X10 or something, and so the tech monitor has to tell the touchpad separately that the projector's on. So no, it's not really that important, especially if it's just in the touchpad being the interface for the system. There are other projects that will have a feedback in the source too, where it say, you know, source 2 over here, because if you press laptop HDMI on the TCX10, it would also show over here on the touchpad itself.
How come that one wasn't populated with anything under feedback?
My guess is because this is just for a classroom that is only controlled by a TekTouchPad.
I know, but wouldn't you highlight the button showing which source has been selected?
The only way that the button is going to get pressed or that source is going to get changed to it is if the button is pressed anyhow. So it'll already be selected. This is just for like, a second UI is pressed and it shows up there.
Oh, okay.
Like, let's see, at Prairie View, our standard systems would have a TCX9. And so we would have, a feedback on there. So it would know if the TCX9 was used to press PC or laptop HDMI. And so these aren't actual like commands in here. These are just references to feedbacks in the tech monitor. So it's really the tech monitor where all this stuff is still set.
Oh, okay. So it's not something we populate anyways.
It's another one of those things that you just got to go through the list on the tech monitor and make sure that matches what is on there. I don't remember we can see it.
I mean, we don't need to populate it from
It does not need to be populated.
this particular configuration utility.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, it's kind of confusing stuff, and I'm not very good at explaining it.
Nah, you're crushing it.
Thanks, bud. What else? I guess back on troubleshooting, a lot of times we see people think that the touchpad is no longer working and it won't change the source on the switcher at all. So in all these ones, the source buttons, they go directly or they get relayed up to the tech monitor, then the tech monitor sends the command back down. And so what you do if it's not changing sources or anything is check if the volume up button or a volume down will work, because those are the only ones that we standard program in there that actually just, not in Prairie View one, because that's a different one. But in, let's say, standard Lone Star room, these are the only ones that are directly sending commands just for the 12.1. So it's a good troubleshooting thing. If you can control the volume of the switcher, but you can't change other things or turn on the projector, likely it's a problem that's up with the tech monitor. Either it's Ethernet port's gone bad, the switch has been changed around so it's no longer on a PoE port, or maybe the cable between usually there's an HDBaseT receiver up there connected to it that then breaks out the RS-232 to the tech monitor, and sometimes those can get mangled over time. Let's see. So over here in the command list, most of what you would be using is serial commands. There's also other things like delay. You want to add in a delay before it sends, volume up, and then you want to change resolution. You probably want a little delay in there to let it process. So you can just put 10, and then you got 100 milliseconds there. Button press, if you want, let's see. Where do we use this one? Usually, like if we turn the projector off and we want the sources to not be selected or anything, you could, no, you wouldn't use that there. Where do we use this? Not often. Oh, if you turn the projector on our default systems, we select PC. And so if you want the PC button to be selected when you turn the projector on, you would go page 1, because the PC button's page 1, button would be just number 2. It just goes 1, 2, 3, 4 down the list there. And you can press or release. Lamp command, I guess we mentioned this earlier, do a lot of things, just flashing the button, setting other buttons, kind of like the button press. Well, So button press will actually run the command that's in the button. Setting here with the lamp command will just highlight the button. Go to page. You may have seen in a lot of our systems that have a Blu-ray button, go to page is enabled on there, and we'd have it usually you hit Blu-ray, then it takes you to the Blu-ray control page. That's usually number 3. Output. Don't think I've ever used that one. Yeah, we don't need to go for that. All right, well, I think that's about all I got for y'all. Anything else I can help with before we're done? And again, please, if you need some projects, send us an email at support@tekvox.com, and I'll start finding out a good way to share our drive folders with whoever needs them.
Excellent. Yeah, and with that, we'll cut y'all loose, and then I will email out JT's reference guide here, as well as a feedback survey to let us know how we did. And then Cameron, I did confirm that you're now on the mailing list. I apologize about that. And if anyone does want to sign up, or you know of someone, you can just refer them to, you can send training@tekvox.com an email, and I'll get you added to the list for next time.
Let me mention, if anyone needs a really detailed guide into this stuff, like you're just wondering what a specific thing does or how to enable something, on the website, there's also a TekTouchPad configuration utility user manual that's pretty dense, but can help answer some questions if I didn't get to it. It's more on the operation of the software versus how it interacts with our control systems.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody, and we will catch you next time.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.
You'll find this useful.